Hi, my name is Antonis and I am the painter of this video. Today you will see me painting a study on a famous painting by Da Vinci, The Lady with an Ermine. This is a beautiful painting. I always loved the way Da Vinci painted the lady with an ermine, and I decided to just try and see if I can learn something out of this study. I will show you at this point the palette that I used, the colors that I've used. Of course, it's oil color, the medium for today's study, and I will see you again at the end of that short palette video. Hi, for painting this lady with an ermine, this is my palette, my setup, and as you see, I've already spread my colors here, and these are the oils, the oil tubes that I use. For this painting, I've just used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 colors. I didn't use any black at all, and the colors that I've used is of course titanium white, alizarin crimson, alizarin red. This is burnt sienna, yellow ochre. This is cadmium yellow. This is some terra verde, green earth. This is cobalt blue, and this is turquoise blue. So I will not show you live how I mix the colors while I'm painting, but I will show you a demonstration here of the basic colors that I used to paint the lady with an ermine. So for start, I used some of this burnt sienna. I mix this burnt sienna along with some ochre, and this basically gives me the color of the base color of hair color. I can add here some a little bit of red to darker this tone and make it a little bit colder. And of course I will add some, as you see here, I have my turpentine. This is an odorless turpentine that will help me dilute this first color. As I start painting the colors, I just I just add turpentine in my colors. I don't add any medium like linoleum oil. There's already some oil in the tubes, so on the first layers of painting, I will just dilute my colors with turpentine. I will keep this medium for the top layers by the end of the painting. So here I have some already added some turpentine, and I will, as you see here, I will. If this is light enough, I will darken it by adding some sienna and a little bit of blue. So this will be the base color of her hair. Next, I will make the color of the purple moss for her face, the base color that I will cover her entire face with it. For this, I will add a little bit of yellow ochre. I will add some a little bit of white maybe just a tiny little bit of alizarin red, and I will see how it goes. As I've said to you many times, I don't have any specific recipes. I just follow the reference painting and try to understand what this might need more. Here I will add a little bit of terra verde, green, just to make it a little bit colder and darker. And it will be something like this to use for hair proplasmos. I can add a little bit of ochre and sienna to darken it a little bit more. Again, I will add some turpentine here to make it more liquid. And there is the color of the base of hair color. Now next I will do the darker facial characteristics on her face. For this I will take some of some burnt sienna and a little bit of blue and some turpentine here, and I will mix the color of her facial characteristics. Now, I will proceed with preparing a color that is the first light on her face. For this, I will take some ochre, I will take some white, and I will add some alizarin red. I want this color to be rosy. If this is too dark, I will add a little bit of white. And I want this to be more on the red side, on the pink side, than the yellow side. I will add a little bit of turpentine, just a tiny little bit. Remember that we mix our colors, when we use oil colors, we use our colors with our spatula or a knife, something that is strong and can mix the hard oil colors as they come from the tube. So this will be my first light, let's say, on her face. Now I will blend the first light with my proplasmos, with the base of her face, just by mixing these two. I can also add in this mixture, if say this is the tone in between the two, I can also add just a tiny little bit of blue to make it, give it some colder hue, make it richer color-wise. And with this tone that is, as you see, darker in between these two, I can blend and mix, let's say, this first light on her face to the base color on the shadow part on her face. Now for the second part, for the second light on her face, I will just take some of the first light here, and of course I will add some white. This will be my second light. Now, as you see on my video, I will also add some rosy cheeks on her face, and for these rosy cheeks I will just add a little bit of more of alizarin red and maybe some cadmium yellow. I will with this very transparent color I will make her rosy cheeks. This can also have some of the first or second light. For example, as my spatula knife is still colored with my second light, I will take some of the alizarin red, just a little bit of alizarin red. I will make a strong red pink color. With this, and by adding now at this point also a little bit of oil medium, I will make the color for her cheeks. Pretty much this is it. If the more I go brighter on the tones on the face, I want to make sure that there is more consistency, bigger percentage of let's say red in it. So if I want to make an even lighter tone for her face, I will use some alizarin red. I've already used some of the second light that is on my spatula, and I can also add a little bit more, and I can also add a little bit of white just to make a stronger light for her face. As you see, since here there was some alizarin red, I added a little bit more here, so the percentage of alizarin red here is bigger than the percentage here. I want, the more I go lighter on the face, the more pink, the more the color must contain more red, not yellow but red. So this will be my third light for her face. Now I can, the whole painting is a mixture of these colors for the most part. I try to blend and mix them and manipulate the color in a way that will give me the face, but it's as simple as doing this. I can also make I can also make a tone that is a little bit cooler, like I can take some of my flesh tone, add a little bit of green, of blue, and make it just a shade cooler. You can't actually tell maybe here, but it makes a difference. And if I need to make a color that is pretty dark, I can wipe, of course, my knife, and then take some alizarin red with some blue. When we mix these two, the result is a very deep black-like color, and if this has some red hues, we can eliminate those by adding just a little bit of terra verde. Green is an opposite color to red, and by mixing those two, we will eliminate any red hues that this mixture might have. So with this color we can make the darker facial characteristics, like the eyelids and the nostrils on her nose, and also some shadows on her on her hair and the head. We can also use this color to make the background, and it's a pretty dark and rich color. For the blue of her clothes, I used cobalt blue with some turquoise blue, and with this color I mixed it and created this rich, nice blue. You can also add a little bit of white to make the tones. Okay, so back to our video. I hope you have a better understanding of the colors that I use, my palette, and the way I will paint this beautiful portrait. As you see, at this point I will paint my underpainting, the so-called underpainting. I have transferred my drawing on my board, and for this I use a regular board that I use for iconography as well. It's the same preparation I do with rabbit skin glue and some calcium powders. I've made a very meticulous drawing using my grid method earlier before. I have transferred this drawing on my board, and now I am overpainting these clear, very specific lines that indicate the facial characteristics of this lady. I try to be as accurate as I can and very close to my reference. I try to imagine what the technique and the method that Da Vinci might have used to paint his portraits, and although I can't be sure, I think that he must have used a method that is pretty close to that of iconography. He must have used base colors, the equivalent of proplasmy, for his hair area, for his face area, and then from then on building with the shadower parts and the more light parts. Now I'm doing the background, a very simple dark background, using my burnt sienna and some cobalt blue. As I have said before in some of my other videos, I don't really have specific recipes in how to make a color for flesh, a color for say a specific cloth, etc. I just try to observe my reference and imagine how the master painter must have painted this color, must have created mixing this color. Here I'm using some burnt sienna and some yellow ochre and a little bit of blue to create this red brownish base color for this girl's hair. As you see, I follow the same iconography method, using covering everything with a base color. And from then on, I will darken and light accordingly, according to what how I want this to proceed. This portrait might seem a little bit intimidating in terms of how perfectly it is painted by Michelangelo, but I would say give it a try, and I don't aspire, of course, to show that I'm painting greatly by doing this. I just want to see that we can paint, we can try and study a painting no matter how great that paint is, how famous that painting is, and see if we can learn anything out of that. So now I am painting this base color for her face, and as you see, since the facial characteristics that I painted before are still wet, I have to be very careful to not delete those, to not erase those by with my brush. I feel a little bit nervous at this point because I want to be very precise about her facial characteristics, and I don't want my brush to sweep the color from that first underpainting where I have established her facial characteristics. The best would be to either paint these characteristics with a tempera medium that dries very quickly, or to wait for a couple of days for this underpainting to dry. Something very interesting also is that I could paint until this stage using all the way egg tempera. Many painters used to start painting their paintings with tempera, and then after a point they used oil as their medium. That saves them a couple of days waiting for the painting to dry. Here, as you see, some days have passed, and this base color of the hair and the face is completely dry, and I am free to proceed with my next step, which is to paint the facial characteristics in a darker tone according to my reference. I take my time, and as I said, I make this darker color using a little bit of the color base of the face, and I have added some blue, cadmium blue, and some alizarin red. I try to not be overwhelmed by Da Vinci's painting when I'm doing the study. I try to convince myself saying that it's okay, I'll just give it a shot, and I don't need to be as perfect as Da Vinci is. So this gives me courage to proceed and continue painting and finish this study. As you see, I observe very closely my reference, and I try to be as precise and as close to that as possible. I have seen some of the studies that many painters do on Da Vinci, and they start and finish their painting, their study, in a very strange to me way. I really doubt that Da Vinci or any master of the past might have painted this way. Which way is that? They will paint on a specific area on their painting, a very specific one, and they will start and finish that area, and then proceed to the next one. I don't think that so they will finish their painting square inch by square inch, in a way that doesn't seem organic, doesn't seem very fluent. Of course, the result, I have to say that it's really strong and really close to the reference. But I have to say that I doubt that the great masters just finished every square inch, every square centimeter of their painting all the way before proceeding to the next square inch and then the next square inch and so far. It doesn't look, it doesn't feel organic, natural to the process of painting. And although I was tempted to experiment a little bit on that, I decided that I will follow my gut. I wasn't present when Da Vinci painted this lady, but I will follow my gut and paint this the way it feels more natural to me. So very similar to iconography, I will take my time to paint the darker facial characteristics, the shadower parts, the darker parts on the face, and I will try to blend them to the proplasmos or the base color of the face as appropriately as it needs to be. Of course, I am new to this oil medium. I don't have really a depth of experience with it, and I'm still trying to learn not only the painting process of it, but also my materials, the brushes, what brushes are more comfortable and feel more controlling, more easy to handle and more suitable for me. I'm still trying to feel how I will handle the pigments, the turpentine, the medium, and all this stuff. So I believe that these studies, to me at least, are very, very helpful in order to understand this medium better. Just take your time and with transparent, fluent brush strokes, try to blend and to define somehow the darker areas of this face or any other face that you will decide to paint using this method. Now, Da Vinci was very famous for using a technique called Sfumato, and I will talk a little bit about Sfumato here because it's something that I have to talk about in this study. I think I've learned one thing or two about it here. But Sfumato is a technique that comes in use later on when there is some oil, some wet oil on the painting, and there needs to be some blending done. Here, as you see, I finished with painting my darker facial characteristics. I've done the best job I could blending them and trying to be faithful to the sitter's expression. In this way, in this case, the woman that I study. And here you see me painting a first layer of light on the face of this girl, the same way that we do in iconography. The brown base color beneath is dry. Several days have passed after the application of that, and I feel free to paint this light without worrying that it will be muddy or it will be dirty from the brown color underneath. If the color was wet, I would have to use a more oily, more impasto layer of light, and that would create a different sensation, a different feeling and atmosphere for my painting. This painting is of Da Vinci is very thin. The layers are thin, and I believe that this was close to Da Vinci's technique. Although I would be glad if someone could give me some other technique that Da Vinci might have used for painting Mona Lisa or this one. Again, here I take my time and I try to observe very, very closely and see which shapes there are, what forms are there, and how to establish those with this first layer of light. As you see, I am using the tip of my brush, and I don't worry at this point about blending or anything like that, just painting first layer of light. So anyway, I this course of today is very serious, so that's why you listen to me being very serious about it. But I have to say that I'm very happy, very glad to talk to you, to communicate with you, even in this way, and I do hope that you spend your time creatively since the last time you saw a video of mine. Um, Again, a big thank you for being here and for being part of this community. We shouldn't be, in my opinion, painting is fun, and this project really was a fun project for me. I really had a good time painting it. I was completely absorbed, and this is an indication um, of how I felt about this study. So I do hope that you will take the risk, I would say, to paint this study, uh, to compare yourself with Da Vinci. It sounds completely, surrealistic. It's not, of course, a comparison. This is just a simple, humble study, and yeah. But I would say that please take the risk, take the challenge to paint this portrait, and you might find you might surprise yourself with the result. At this point, as you see, I'm just painting this first light. See how simple it is, and nothing to be afraid about, not to be intimidated about this one. I'm sure that if you follow these instructions, the result will be beautiful. Here on the mouth, try to not distort the shape of the mouth. Pay some extra attention to it. And try to see where the light hits the upper lip or the chin. The more you paint, the more you will have the experience to understand how things will change when you will blend this first light to the base color. And to me, but as I said, I have no much experience with using oil. The more I paint with this beautiful and mysterious, in many ways, medium, the more I paint, the more I understand how I can blend this better, and how I can move and manipulate the color in ways that I want them to be moved. I think Da Vinci and those early Renaissance and Renaissance masters were comfortable with painting in both mediums, tempera and oil. And as one of my subscribers commented very, very to the point, I think. Knowing how to paint with tempera is a big advantage when you paint with oils. We tend to paint oils in a brighter way, a more vivid and playful maybe way, I don't know. I think it's a great advantage to know how to paint with tempera when you paint with oils as well. So don't just compromise, no, don't just restrict yourselves by saying that you only use tempera, you're only tempera painters, or that you're only oil medium painters. I would say experiment with both mediums, and one will inform the other about painting. Now here you see me doing some first blending this light to my base color. For this I'm using a warmer tone that is than the light, a warmer and a shade or two darker than the first light, in areas where I think the portrait is warmer and need a warmer blending. For this blending I've used some of the first light with some alizarin red and a little bit of the color of the base color. Again, I try not to freak out at this point about how this portrait looks. As you see here, I made the second blending in between tone here that is a little bit greenish, not as warm as the previous one, but of the same value of that reddish blending. And with this I will do some more blending on areas of the face that don't seem very warm. I try not to freak out and to have faith that the portrait will come about in an okay way, that I will not destroy my career as an artist here. And I wish many times I wish I had some teacher to teach me all these techniques, all these secrets that these masters might have. Unfortunately, it seems to me that I have to rediscover them, or partially them, some of them. I don't think that many painters do their own interpretations of the techniques of these old masters. Yes, there are some recipes, there are some books and texts that explain and talk about the techniques of these old masters. And pretty much they are okay, they explain it very thoroughly, but at the same time, the more I read these, or the more I have read those books, the more confused by the end I feel, and the more uncertain about the techniques of these old painters. So at some point I decided that I have to just have to do these studies, and if the study by the end looks okay or pretty close to the result, then probably the technique I've used is pretty close to the result. I want to use a technique though that feels natural to me, that feels enjoyable, and that feels probable as well. This way of painting with using a base color feels very calm and relaxing to me. feels almost meditative at some point, and I can't believe that these old masters of that period would use something else like the Griselle technique, or a technique where they would just paint directly the darker areas and then the light areas. I feel that at that period still although they used oil as the medium, sometimes, as I said, both oil and tempera, but although they knew how to use oil color, they filled the whole. I feel I'm pretty sure that they filled the whole painting with a base color, and then they built light and shadows, or more accurate, shadows and the light on top. I would be thankful if you commented below if you have any other idea of how Da Vinci painted this lady with an Ermine or Mona Lisa. I would be glad to be informed about that. And here, as you see, I'm still doing this blending. I noticed that that she has some rosy cheeks on her face, so I did use a little bit of alizarin red and some cadmium yellow, just a tiny little bit of yellow to make this blending. And of course, blending oil is something very different than blending with egg tempera. This is so much more easy, and things happen almost magically. You don't have to try a lot to blend. The painting blends itself. So just to have a perspective of what I'm doing here, I have painted my darker facial characteristics on a base brownish base color. I've painted the basic light shapes with a color with titanium, yellow ochre, and some alizarin red, and then I did some blendings, some warm and some colder blendings that are using colors that are in between the base color and the first light. These blending colors can be warm or like using base color, first color, and some alizarin red, and just a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow, and greener where I used the first light, some of the proplasmos color, and a little bit of green or cobalt blue in it. I don't really, I'm not preoccupied about the color of my study, what colors I use, and about the colors being close to my reference. I don't really care about that at this point. I'm more interested in establishing a tonal value, the value of the study, to keep my darks dark and my lights light, to not lose the shape of a shadow there, right below, right next to the nose. My preoccupation is to not blend so much as to lose these shapes and the darkness, their value of the value of the things. If I lose this, I have to go back and re-establish that and see if I can correct some mistake. I'm not in a hurry to proceed to a next layer of light. I'm just, this is, I think, the most important part of the study, where you have to blend this first light to your probosmos in a way that makes sense and that the lights are and the shadows are in the right proportions. So sfumato, I want to say a couple of things at this point. Sfumato is a technique where you blend in such a way that things are kept hazy, in a hazy, are painted in a hazy way. You can't really see the edges and the contours of the shapes, and I think that the more you proceed with the painting, the more easy it is to do this sfumato blending. You can do sfumato from the beginning, since at first you just have to establish your lights and your shadows, and you just have to do some basic blending in order to understand how this painting will work. And then at some point, when you have some when your painting is already much oily, much grease on it, you will do the sfumato in some areas like the mouth and the lips, etc. Although I'm not an expert on it, I believe that sfumato, like as you see me doing a little bit here, is on the edge of on the left edge of the mouth, is much based on the brush and how dry your brush is, or how not loaded, let's say, your brush is, and how this dry almost brush will sweep on areas that are still wet, to areas that are still wet of different values, and the dry brush will unify these areas, will blend these two wet areas, and create this beautiful hazy effect. So if you want to experiment with sfumato, I would just suggest that you at first apply too thin colors on a surface that are still wet, that are still oily, and see if you can blend those with a brush that is not completely dry, but almost dry, a brush that is for sure not loaded with any pigment, with a lot of pigment on it. you can you can touch your brush on a color that is in between value of these two colors that you want to sfumato blend. Then wipe your brush on a piece of paper, and then just wipe this brush, pass your brush on the edge of these two, on the place where these two colors meet, and I think you'll achieve this sfumato effect. I think I will make a video in the future about sfumato, a more detailed video about sfumato in the future. What I learned about it here is that the best way to achieve this sfumato technique is not so much on the color itself or the way you move your brush on it, but it's more on the brush itself, and how loaded the brush is, and how I think at some point all these techniques are becoming part of your muscle memory, let's say, and you will be able to do this if you have some experience. You will do it more and more easy. I know that I might not make sense now that I'm talking. It's raining here, the weather is not it's not good weather, and I've already told you that winter is not my favorite time of the year, so please show some understanding, some compassion here. Now, in iconography, there are, when we paint in iconography, there are some parts of the base color, the so-called proplasmos, that are visible even by the end of the icon. Here, I feel free to, and I feel free to cover this base color with a color that is more suitable, let's say, or that will help me blend the shadow part to the light here on the upper part of the torso of this woman. And again here some sfumato blending on the face. Many viewers complain that I jump sometimes from an area of the painting to another without any specific reason, but when I'm painting I might see something that bothers me, and my brush is probably loaded with the appropriate color to correct it, so that's why I'm tempted, and I succumb to this temptation to directly correct what I see and what's bugging me, and then continue with the work that I was doing. Here I can't really, it's on high speed, the video plays on high speed, and I can't really teach my students how to blend. I can give some general guidelines maybe, but I really cannot hold your hand there and try to make you blend the way I do. Each painter has its own nervous and muscle system, and that informs the way we touch, we hold the brush, the way we paint, and even as I say, even though these are studies and copies, let's say, of these masters, I don't aspire to paint exactly like Da Vinci, because I'm not Da Vinci. I am Antonis Kosmadakis, and no matter how much I try, I will never paint exactly the same way Da Vinci did. I'm okay with that. I'm really okay. And as I said, I already learned some things about the Sfumato technique here. For example, here on the upper lid, I have to, if you notice well, you will see some areas that are darker and need to be blended in such a way as I explained before. There on the right eyelid, it's not just a flat light above the iris. It's an eyelid with some shadows and some lights, and me as a painter, I have to address that and find a way to blend the light with the shadow on the upper lid there in a way that is convincing and worthy of the reference that I'm using. So sfumato painting is very characteristic on the paintings of Da Vinci, and more than that, his work is flawless. You rarely see any brush strokes in the way that you see those in the works of the Impressionists or other painters. And reason for that is also his is of course the sfumato technique, and in general his often his scientific approach on whatever Da Vinci did. I can feel this approach on this study. It's something that it's as if this painting of his is painted using a mathematic code, something like that. It's very precise and truly as if he was painting for a scientific book or something like that. I admire that. I totally respect, and it's a level of painting that I know that I can never achieve. But at the same time, I'm not Da Vinci, and it's okay to paint with imperfections and to not aspire to be such a great of a painter. That's fine. I'm fine with that, and yeah. I suspect that another way that Da Vinci used to make this perfect brushless almost painting is that maybe some parts of his blending were made a couple of days after the first application of color. The color was maybe almost dry or half dry, and then using a completely dry brush, he would manipulate this almost dry color and make it as smooth as we see it today. I'm not sure, this is just an assumption, and it's something for me to experiment with and see if I can achieve a similar effect on these. I'm pretty sure that El Greco did such a blending on his faces, the faces that he painted. He would wait for a couple of days, and then he would move the color around with a dry brush, giving thus a result of that is very expressionistic and vivid. Of course, he used very coarse brush strokes, but I think that you can achieve smoothness and this sfumato effect by using an oily a brush that is maybe dipped in oil, and then just touching on the drying color below it. I hope that you understand this course today, what I'm talking about. This will be a very long video, and I didn't want to divide this video into two parts. I just want to keep it big. I hope that you will get something interesting and something helpful out of it. Now, here the second part of this video begins. Maybe the third, it's the third sitting session of mine, where this first light is dry and the first blending to microplasmos is dry, and I feel quite happy about it. The expression of this lady looks good to me, looks okay. And now it's time to proceed with the second light and the blending of this second light to my first light. So it's again the same thing. What I did before, I will do the same thing now. I will try to observe the areas where this second light exists, the brighter areas of on her face, and paint accordingly. I will not. I don't care much about blending this second light to my first right now. I will just apply and paint this first light in the shapes that I need to paint. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that by watching this video you will be tempted to try this for yourselves, and I'm pretty sure that you will be very surprised about your results. The first thing in making a great painting is to know what we are doing, of course, as much as possible. Many times I paint without knowing what what I'm doing, just painting in random, and that's of course part of the learning process, part of the painting experience. That's fine. But it's also nice sometimes to know our process, to know where we stand in the process, and what we do, to own our palette, and to move, to proceed accordingly. So I think this video will help many of you understand this process. Of course, as I said before, I wasn't there when Da Vinci painted the lady with an Ermine, but I'm pretty sure that more or less this might be the steps that he followed. So if you paint this portrait, I would be very excited to see the results of your efforts, and to let me know how you felt by painting this. Feel free to send me photographs on my email that's on the description of the video below. Of course, it would be great if you supported this channel on patreon.com, my page there, where many of my supporters support me financially. This helps me upload the content, and I'm very grateful to them, very grateful. But I want to thank you for subscribing and for being part of this channel, also by commenting, by asking questions. I'm always glad to answer, although it takes some time to respond to you sometimes. But I try to respond to each and every one of you as best as I can, and it's always nice to listen to your thoughts, your comments, and your ideas about future suggestion about future videos. So again, thank you so much for being part of this community. Continue supporting this channel by commenting, asking questions, answering also questions, and if you if you can support this channel, please feel free to, financially, I mean. Anyway, so here I have painted these first shapes of the second light, and now as you see, I will start by blending this light to my previous painting. As I said before, I've let this painting rest for some days, and now the color beneath the second light is completely dry. If you want, you can use the oil out technique, that is to pass a very thin layer of pure linseed oil on the whole painting, and this will help you blend this second light even better. Actually, for this study I have passed a very thin layer of oil using a very soft piece of cloth. I just added a couple of drops of linseed oil drops on the cloth, and I rubbed the completely dry painting with that. So now that I'm painting the second light, this will sit on a thin oil layer that will help me move the color better and blend it better. Of course, to blend this second light, I will use a color that is very similar to my first light. For this second light, I have used the colors of the first light, that is yellow ochre, titanium white, and a little bit of alizarin red. And for the second light, I will add some more titanium white into that first blend, and also a tiny little bit of alizarin red. I want, as I proceed, as I move on, to be more on the pinkish side than the green, than the yellow side of the colors. And now, as you see, I'm using a color that is in between this second light and the first light. I've added also some oil medium to make this more transparent and more oily, and I'm doing this blending. I always try to compare my darks with my lights and see if this comparison is similar on my reference. I try to keep my darks there, not to cover them. Darks on a face or on a painting are very, very, very important. They will reveal the light and they will make everything come together. When you do such a type of painting, I think one of the most important tips that I give to my students is to spend some time on their painting. For these type of paintings, like Baroque, Renaissance paintings, I think they are worked much. The reference, I mean, the original painting that we use to study is a painting that Da Vinci here worked a lot for weeks, maybe months. He really spent a lot of time to paint the painting. So if we finish this painting in half an hour, we should be a little bit suspicious that something is not right. We should spend some time and work it enough. I don't say that there are not fantastic works of art that are painted in a very quick, very spontaneous way, but when you paint works like this, take your time and be suspicious if this portrait of yours ends within the first 2 hours. It doesn't. It will not. Something will be off. in my opinion and from my experience, the more you paint on a painting, the more I don't mean that it will become better, but the time is there to be seen, and you can tell when a painting, when the painter has spent some time working on a painting. It's another factor that adds value on the painting, in my opinion. At the same time, you have to know when to stop your painting, when to not overwork the painting, and to name it, to call it a day, and put your brushes down. Another thing that I want to discuss at this point is that many times we paint this second layer. This is also something we do in iconography, and that second layer just feels of low quality, feels fake, feels almost plastic. It doesn't sit very well on the first light. This is because when this happens, you have to revisit these areas with your first light, blend second and first light again, and more gradually build your shapes to the light. If we abruptly go from the first light to our highlights, to the areas of the face where need to be light, if we go there abruptly, then the result often looks plastic, if I make sense. So now I have to say that I used for this study just round brushes that are suitable for moving oil colors. And I will proceed with painting the details of this face by observing my reference as much as I can. I still have to say that I haven't 100% found my best brushes, or what's the brushes that best suit me. I feel that I'm doing something wrong with these brushes. Maybe this is just my comparison with Tempera brushes, where I feel that I have 100% the control of the brush and the pigment and the way I apply the pigment on the surface. But here I have to say that I don't feel in absolute control of the color. The color looks sometimes feels very thick on my brush in a way that is not easy to apply and blend. And something this is something that I'm still struggling with. Oil is a very different has a different method and techniques than Tempera, and I'm not sure if this is a matter of my inexperience or a matter of the wrong materials, that wrong brushes that I use. I'm pretty sure it's not a matter of the medium itself. As I've seen, we all have seen paintings painted with oil that are extremely detailed. The painters like the Northern Renaissance masters of Holland, of the Flemish masters, used oil in a way that was extremely detailed. So I'm pretty sure this is not matter of the medium itself. On the contrary, the medium can achieve fantastic results. It's more, I would say, my inexperience, and maybe I haven't found yet the right brushes and the right consistencies to paint as in control as when I paint with tempera. So here what you see is me going back and forth doing corrections. My palette, as I showed you before, is pretty limited, I would say. That's good because it can help me go lighter or darker without the risk of adding some color that is completely foreign to the previous process. So at this point I'm just doing the corrections, and this will be pretty much the same thing until the end of this study. Again, I wish I had a tutor, a teacher so bad. He would tell me, hey, look, check here, this you should paint darker, you should paint it lighter. I miss my student days in the School of Fine Arts in both Athens and at the San Francisco State University, where I took my master's degree on painting. It's nice to be a student, and there is always someone uh, to correct you. You don't have to worry much about the result. Your teacher is there to correct you. For now, I have to compromise with having Da Vinci as my teacher. It's not bad at all. But you know what I mean. Sometimes we tend to make our portraits without substantial darks, substantial shadows, and this is something we should take under consideration always when we paint a portrait. We have to ask ourselves, are these are the dark elements dark enough in my portrait or not? If not, this might contribute to a portrait that is flat, uninteresting. Try to observe where a light ends, where shadows begin on a form, like here on the eyelid. I observe where to light the eyelid and where to stop and let the shadow begin. It's more easy when you stop seeing things as facial characteristics, but you start seeing shapes and comparing these shapes to one another. And now I will do this white part of the eyes, and here I have to make sure that this blends in a way that I see it blending in the reference. I will add some color here, then I will pretty much wipe the excess pigment off my brush, and I will maybe load a little bit of my shadows on the brush here and blend as you see here. I added some white color, I wiped it on a cloth, I added a little bit of darker color, and then I did some sfumato blending there with a brush that was almost dry. And now even darker. The good thing with using oils as medium is that you can just wipe your brush and load it with something else. I notice how dark or white this part of the eye is. I notice that Da Vinci hasn't painted this eye very lightly, the part very lightly. So I want to make sure that I will not paint the white part of the eye very bright. And of course, I will observe how light he has painted the iris, and if this lit part of the iris is brownish or greenish or bluish or whatever. Now this reflection on the eyes, it's I think one of the most important, two of the most important brush strokes of your portrait. Make sure that this little highlight is as discreet as in your reference, and in order to make that discreet, you can load your brush with a transparent light color using a lot of oil medium, and just let that oily white transparent semi-transparent drop light your iris. The painting so far looks pretty good. I guess that I could put an end on it, make an end of it, and finish painting this. But again, this is a study, and I want to see if I can push my limits a little bit here and see if I can learn something or if something better will come up if I keep on painting. At this point, the painting is wet enough, and I have to be very careful how I paint how I apply the pigment, not to make it dirty or muddy. I'm pretty sure that that Da Vinci did not finish his this portrait in just 3 sittings, the way I painted this, and of course this makes me suspicious about the techniques that in the process of Da Vinci. I really believe that he may have worked a fourth or even a fifth time on his on this face, although I can't really tell what I could paint if I let this dry for some days and revisit it. Another thing that I have noticed about these paintings of Da Vinci and Raphael more maybe is that although they seem to be um, very well blended and their use of sfumato is fantastic and for the most part it seems um, great. If you go close enough, you can definitely see some very charming, very nice, tiny little brush strokes that added to the beauty of the painting. If you zoom in, you will see some tiny little hairs on the eyebrows of this lady, of course, in Da Vinci's original painting, and some other tiny brush strokes that somehow underline the whole painting and add a layer of life to it that it wouldn't have if it was just all blended and all painted in that sfumato way. So it's always nice to paint using a variety of techniques and to keep in mind that blending is not by itself something of great value. It's the way we use blending and the way we paint it all. I'm very happy that I used a limited palette with this painting, using just 8 colors and for the most part 6, as I haven't used almost any cadmium yellow and almost any turquoise blue, but on her cloth. So pretty much I've painted this portrait using only 6 colors, and I'm pretty happy about that because if I had an unlimited palette, this would only confuse me and maybe delay me. So don't worry if you have just a few colors, feel free to paint and make good use of those. Some painters, when they paint their studies, they light the faces excessively. They use to cover everything with their brightest light, and this is very tricky. I have to restrain myself from adding a lot of white and a lot of light everywhere. And I have to remember that there should be an even a balanced application on the light. Of course, my reference will guide me, but yeah. To me, it is truly unbelievable that artists of that period achieved such a beauty. The heights and the level of the artistic value is unbelievable to me. Of course, I'm not talking just about Da Vinci or Michelangelo, but many artists of that period and prior, of course. Uh, it's just unbelievable that we people have it in ourselves to create objects of that beauty. Of course, Da Vinci was not the first one, and Michelangelo to create objects of such beauty. I'm not, of course, the one to judge what objects are beautiful or not. I'm sure many civilizations have produced unbelievably interesting and beautiful objects. But I remember when I visited Delphi, the Museum of Delphi in Greece. Um, I searched the sculptures that were there, and when I saw that there was a sculpture named Iniochos, it's a very famous sculpture here, I wasn't that enthusiastic. I had seen Iniochos in many postcards and in the history of art, and I was like, okay, whatever, one more sculpture. But when I entered that room in the Museum of Delphi and saw that green reflection on the walls by the sculpture and the sculpture itself, I was just mesmerized by its beauty. And I remember I kept thinking that this sculpture comes from the future. It's almost as if it was made by aliens, by not by human hands. The beauty of it and the power of that work of art were really unbelievable. And to me, this says something about us as human beings, what we are able to achieve, and the beauty that we are born with. It's something that consoles me and gives me strength and power to keep going on this earth for as long as I will be. I'm blessed enough to teach art at school, and I'm glad that I'm able to teach this art appreciation to kids, to young adults, and I'm always happy to make them understand the power and the beauty of the works of art. But even so, I'm always surprised that these artists truly achieved such levels of perfection in their works. So as you see here, it's just blending and blending and more blending, and that is really fine. Um, if you feel that you need to add something, to paint more, to perfect it even more, feel free to do it. Don't stop your painting just because at some point you need to stop. Even if you destroy by overworking your artwork, this still will be a precious learning experience, and even though you might not have an actual result product of your work, you will have some hours of experience there of moving color around with your brush, and next time you will be more experienced and better. You will remember your muscles, your nervous system will remember the movements, and you will paint better. So even if you destroy a painting, that's fine. Just keep painting for as much, as long as you feel that your painting, your study needs. So here, as you see, I'm doing a little bit of sfumato blending. I'm wiping my brush on a piece of cloth, and then I am caressing the color on my painting in a way that smoothens it and blends it very transitional. I know that by now many of you might be sleeping, and that's really nice, really fine with me. I often watch videos of artists and other YouTubers that bring me to sleep in a matter of seconds. So it's really I would say it's a compliment. If you write to me that these videos help you relax and even sleep, I will take it as a compliment. It's a really long video. I don't think I've ever posted a video that long. It's more than 2 hours long. But I think it's a course that it's nice to post it for free in just one video, and if you can't watch it, although if you are watching until here so far, then congratulations to you. Let me know on the comments below that you did actually watch the whole video. I don't think many of you will do it, but anyway, um, I I decided to not split the course into parts just because I wanted it to be in one entire video. I was thinking to post it on a platform where you could somebody could pay to to watch this video, but I decided to upload this for on YouTube, where you can watch this for free. If though you would like to support this channel, again, feel free to find me on patreon.com, and you will find the link on the description below, and support me financially there. This is almost, as you see, done. I will underline a little bit the darker areas of the eyes, the pupil, and the eyelids. I erased this highlight there just because I needed to darken the pupil. And the eyelids, the eyebrows a little bit. Here, when I am applying these darker areas, I want to make sure that there is some degree of blending on their edges. They're not just sharp black lines, very dark lines. It's not black. It's a mixture of burnt sienna, alizarin red, and cobalt blue. But I want to make sure that I don't apply these darker lines in a way that is very abrupt and sharp. I will do some basic blending as you see here. Some sfumato blending here on the edges of the mouth. And retouching this reflection again. You can understand by watching this video how tedious painting can become sometimes, how back and forth we painters move, and how we are never quite satisfied with our result and want to push for something better and something better. I'm pretty sure that I could have finished this portrait a couple of hours earlier, but I don't know exactly what my limits are here and where to stop. I just feel that until now, the more I paint, the more I contribute to the value of this painting. I have to say that at this point I'm pretty happy with the result of this study. I like the way light and shadow is built on the face of this lady, and more than that, I will say that I'm happy about this study. I feel that I have learned quite a few things about the medium, the application of color, and the Sfumato technique itself. It's something that for sure will be useful to me, and that's why we do those many of those studies. We can apply all these techniques, all the things we learn from these studies to our personal work, artistic work, to the paintings that are completely our own. I don't mean that I will start painting ladies in this sfumato, using the sfumato technique, or mimicking the style of Da Vinci or the Renaissance style, although that could be, an artistic proposition. But I would say that when this becomes part of your education, these styles, these techniques are part of your education, they will find a way to be incorporated in your own artistic work. Here now, do not freak out. I decided that the light on her face was a little bit too spread towards the shadow part, so I decided to limit it a little bit, to make it more abrupt, the transition between light and shadow just a tiny little bit more abrupt, and also lessen the extent of the light on her face, just a tiny little bit. I think this works better than before, a little bit better, and I'm happier with the result. The thing is that, as I said, the more we paint, the more we correct some things sometimes, and the question is, okay, if now I found this, what else can I find? What else can I improve? What else can I paint better? This is a process that at some point we realize that will never end, and we just have to declare the study finished, and move on to our next project. I want to thank all of you for being here. If anyone is still here at this point of the video, I would be really glad if you let me know. Just send me on the comments, along with your comment, send me a little image of a clock if you can, so that I know that you really stayed so far on this video. Thank you so much. I wouldn't continue making these videos if I didn't receive so warm comments from you all. I just have to say that I truly am humbled by your response to these videos, and when you tell me that it's these videos help you continue your education on painting, on iconography, this really helps you to just go back to your studio again. I have to say that it's really moving for me, and it's I think the best reward I could have. So thank you again so much for your participation and for your amazing presence in the comment section below. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel. It's really amazing that we have reached more than 5,000 subscribers so far. It's really truly amazing and unbelievable. So a big thank you for this, and I hope that I will continue uploading stuff that's gonna be very useful to you. Now I see that there are the, the face is almost to an end. I just I don't know why I keep painting, why I keep on painting. I think it's done, and I should just wash my brushes and declare this finished. You can always find me on my email below, and you can send me there your paintings, your progress. You can also find me if you need any commissioned artwork. Feel free and to reach me at that email and discuss what you want me to finish, if you want something to paint, and the details of that. The upper torso part here, I felt it was a little bit too bright for on the shadowed part, and needed to be just a little bit darker. That meant that I had to do also some blending in order to look the way it was before. I would say that I struggle the most finding the shadows and keeping the shadows as dark as they should be. It's really hard for me. I have to force myself go darker, and even now that I painted this darker element on her shoulder, I feel that I could have gone even more dark without fear, but I guess that is fine too. This is a tricky area of the painting because the shapes they are in shadow and they're not easy to discern and paint their shapes, I mean. So I'll just do some basic blending over there. I'll try to make it satisfying for me, that area, as much as I can, and for the most part I will leave it be. Thank you so much again. This was a free course on how to paint the lady with an Ermine, originally painted by Da Vinci. Thank you all so much for being here, and I wish that you will find this course interesting and useful to you. Spend some time in your studio as much as you can. This is the time that will keep us balanced and happy. It doesn't matter if the results of our paintings are great or not. The important thing is to spend time in our studios. With this, I want to say goodbye to all of you, to thank you once more, and I hope to see you again soon with another great tutorial. Have a nice week. Bye.